sticking around or joining us. It's my honor to be here. I'm really, really excited about this panel, and I have to thank my co-commissioner, Elizabeth Smith, for getting this together. Just a reminder that this is part of a full day of activities where we are officially launching our Women's Suffrage Monument project, where we're going to have a monument on the Statehouse grounds to honor women suffragists. And so here in a second, I'm going to hand this over, but I just want to remind everyone that actually we started the commission in 2019, and Senator Kunze was one of the sponsors of that legislation to make the Women's Suffrage Commission. That kind of timed out, like we kind of ran out of time because pandemic kind of took things over a little bit. So we've continued on as a private commission with all of our commissioners. And it's been so incredible to work together with this vision of really representing women and history makers on the Statehouse lawn. So I already gave the stat, but for those at home just tuning in, only 5% of monuments in the United States represent real women. And so in our own Statehouse lawn, I think all of us know that there are many, many change makers. But on the Statehouse lawn, all of those monuments, all of those folks deserve to be there, but they're all white men. What has always worried me is that children could look at those and think that that's who makes history, when we know that all of us make history together. And so with that, I'm just going to hand it over to my friend and colleague who did a great job pulling this panel together and thinking about the questions. So Elizabeth Smith, I'm going to hand it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to all of you. I am so excited to present this panel today. We have three wonderful, smart, intelligent leaders here who are going to share with us their words of wisdom. And so to get started, let me first to my left introduce Senator Michele Reynolds. She is a dedicated public servant. She is the 26th Republican state senator in Ohio's 135th General Assembly. She represents much of Franklin County. Her diverse leadership roles include chair of the Senate Select Committee on Housing, vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, alongside her membership in the Education, Community Revitalization, Workforce, and Higher Education, and Rules and Reference Committees. She has achieved significant milestones in affordable housing, providing housing for over 5,000 returning citizens in Ohio. On her private side, she is a passionate advocate for entrepreneurship. She has created over 200 jobs, launched 8 successful businesses, and established a business incubator for aspiring entrepreneurs in Central Ohio. If that isn't enough, she also holds multiple degrees. She doesn't do anything just once. She has a Bachelor of Science in Criminal History, a Master's in Public Administration and Urban Studies, a Master of Laws, 2 honorary doctorate degrees in Philosophy and Civil Law, and she is currently a third-year law student, earning her Juris Doctorate at the University of Dayton. My condolences. Her efforts have earned her numerous accolades, and such as the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award from President Obama for her humanitarian work in housing. To my immediately right is Emily Shriver. She is a democracy advocate, CEO, lawyer, speaker, a mom to 3 independent women. Joining the Matriots in 2021, she is now the CEO of the Matriots. It's a political action group, nonpartisan, leading the mission to get more Ohio women elected to public office. She was formerly the Assistant Vice President and Senior Associate General Counsel at The Ohio State University. She was also a Ninth Circuit Clerk of Appeals clerk and then joined as an associate at the Hogan Lovell firm in D.C. So she is a graduate of Northwestern School of Law and OSU undergrad. She has a history of working with women candidates from all walks of politics from all across Ohio, women who come to politics for a lot of different reasons and assists in strategizing to get women elected. And finally, to my far right is Mehek Cooke. She is a lawyer. And by the way, I didn't really set out to have 3 lawyers on this panel, but I love lawyers. She is a lawyer, a political strategist, and consultant from America's well-known swing state. She is CEO of American Frontier Strategies. And as a political operative, she served in the Ohio governor's office and on a presidential campaign. She is a key player in Ohio politics. Born in India, but raised in Ohio, her ethnic and legal background give her a unique perspective on politics. She is a graduate of the Indiana University Law School and also has a master's in political science. She's a regular contributor to Ohio and Canadian media outlets, including NBC4, News Nation, Newsmax, and Fox News, with specific expertise and insight on economic issues, immigration, race relations, election analysis, and national security. So all 3 of these women are accomplished professionals and wives and mothers. They are leaders, and they have strong commitments to public service. But today, and we are putting politics aside, it's important that people of all walks of life know how to come together to address important issues, regardless of political affiliation. We want to hear from women across the board what it is that makes them successful leaders. And they will share with us the importance of lifting other women up through leadership and example. So let's address the first question. The previous panel that you heard spoke about the advancements made in society after the right to vote was recognized for women. And many of those benefits advancements inured to the benefits of others. We talk about paternity leave of both parents, availability of adoption for single women, appreciation that underprivileged children need programs to ready them for kindergarten. What do each of you see as further advancements that are needed, and how can women continue to lead the way? I'm going to start with you, Mehek.
Thank you. So I think that
Unmute.
While women have made a lot of advancements in our state, there's still so much work to do. Before I became a mom several years ago, I was looking to adopt in Ohio, and I still want to do it. It is my dream to give back to a state that's given so much to me. And I realized very quickly that the adoption process in Ohio is one of the hardest things you could possibly go through. Not only do you call in a caseworker that has been working probably too long for too many years and is overstretched in terms of the bandwidth and work that they have, but they weren't able to offer a lot to me in terms of resources. As somebody who wants to adopt, and I've talked to many others, they have said it's a laborious process as well. You have to go to different counties to actually go attend classes. I live in Franklin County, and my response was, may I do all my coursework here? My husband and I will show up. But there was no flexibility. And I think that if we want to be a state that is helping women, that's advocating for women, that's giving women resources, one of the things we have to do a better job of is helping women adopt. If somebody is giving up their child for whatever reason, then we need to be a state that's welcoming. We need to be a state that's providing resources and options and flexibility. I strongly believe background checks are important. I strongly believe individuals that don't need money from the state, we don't need it, but we would like to give back to be able to expedite those types of things for us. But to have to go from county to county to chase classes is just really tough. I also think Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Husted have done a wonderful job with pregnancy centers, but I think there needs to be additional funding and help. There's so many programs here. I can talk about in Central Ohio, the Moms to Be program. Many mothers are coming in and they're looking for resources. They're looking for help. They're looking for advocacy. And the number one thing I can tell you during COVID was it was baby formula. So we have to be better about how we're providing resources. I think the state is a starting point, but then people like me and many others coming together to volunteer. But I think that there's a lot of space for women to grow in this area. Those are just two. I think adoption and pregnancy centers need the most help for women to be able to advance here.
Thank you. That's a great response. As a child who was adopted by parents in Ohio, I feel that very deeply. I think about a few different things that could lead for women's advancements. One is that 1 in 11 businesses in the state, small businesses in the state of Ohio, are owned by women, are women-owned businesses. And there is not enough focus on the needs of women-owned businesses and in the conversation that happens around the creation of laws for women, for businesses, small businesses, that focus on what do women-owned small businesses need. And I'd be really interested in Senator Reynolds' perspective on that as well. The same is true about innovation. Women are more likely to be have funding through angel investment. If they are starting a tech startup, they are incredibly likely to have those first dollars come in. And so how do we really take those innovative dollars and push those towards women-owned technologies and women-led technologies? And the third one is probably that women in the state of Ohio are also more likely to be low-wage earners, right? So the number of individuals who are in minimum wage jobs in the state of Ohio, of that, the largest percentage are women, and particularly women of color. And so when we think about what is it that we do to incentivize and help the lowest wage earners in our state, we really are focusing on women in those spaces.
Excellent. Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you. I do believe we've made a lot of advancements in this area, but we definitely have more work to do. And one of the largest issues that affects every family is childcare. And childcare, quite frankly, is just unaffordable for most families. Whether or not you receive publicly funded childcare or not, it is just very, very expensive. And I see heads going up and down. I now am a grandmother. At 50 years old, I have a granddaughter who's 2. And my son and daughter-in-law, quite frankly, can't afford childcare. And so I help them. And it takes families to have to do that. My grandmother helped my mother and father when I was being raised. And not everybody has the means to do that. And so I recently introduced a bill called the Child Care Cred Bill, which is modeled after the Tri-Share bill in Michigan. And what it does is it allows, and it's permissive, but it allows our business community to be able to contribute towards child care if they want to as a health care benefit up to a third. And then the state can give grants up to a third, and then the family a third. So we split it in thirds so that it can make it more affordable. And this is for those that do not get publicly funded child care. So this is above and beyond that. Because if you have multiple children, even if you have a good income, it's just not affordable. And due to inflation and other factors, even beyond COVID, now it is impacting not only the family, but the workforce and also child care providers. Because even though we may put together a nice funding source, there's just not enough providers. And so we need to really incentivize providers to get back into the business of child care. And that will actually not only help the family, but it will allow women, because usually it's the woman who stays home with the children. And so we're the ones that have to forego those career opportunities. And so we need to make some severe advancements in childcare, and that is something that I'm working on.
Excellent. Well, I'm a mother of 2 daughters that we adopted, so I can identify with that. And I can also identify with how expensive our childcare was. So if we don't do something to recognize that we need to help in that area, we're going to lose a whole generation, right? Because it goes to preparation for education. It goes to just raising up the next generation. So it's extremely, extremely important. So, Michele, Mehek, you're both graduates of the Joanne Davidson Institute for Leadership. Emily, you're the CEO at the Matriots. I don't believe you went to the Joanne Davidson, am I correct?
I didn't,
though
Joanne Davidson was the first person to tell me to run for office.
Okay,
So,
yeah, there you are.
so
You're
we're all-
honorary.
we're all in the same space.
Yeah,
Yes, we're all in the
exactly.
same space.
So you all three have been guided by women, and you help guide women to be political leaders. Tell us, each of you, tell us about your leadership journey. And do you believe that women bring different or unique leadership skills to the table? And give us examples. And I'm just going to be random. I'll start this time with you, Emily.
Sure. So I would say that my leadership journey started at Ohio State when I was an undergrad, and I was appointed by then Governor Taft to be on the Board of Trustees for The Ohio State University. And in that role, I was surrounded by incredible business leaders, community leaders, including Representative Speaker Joanne Davidson and Bob Duncan, the Honorable Bob Duncan. And both of them were individuals who looked at what I had thought were my dreams and my capabilities and said, you could do more. You can go out. You can do anything that you'd like to do. And so they helped me get a position as an intern in Representative Price's office in Washington, D.C. And I really think that changed the trajectory of my life. I went to law school after that, after Judge Duncan told me I should be a lawyer, and I didn't know what else I should do. I was not going to be a music educator, which was my original plan, to be the best trombonist I could be.
So we all get law degrees because we don't know what else to do.
Because we didn't know what to do. And so that really sent me into a space of thinking about what are the types of things you can do in political leadership. And it really opened my eyes because of those individuals who took me under their wing, helped me see other potential opportunities, and cleared a path for me. And I would say it was women and it was men, right, that allowed for me to see my potential. And I don't know that I've truly recognized whatever that potential is, but what we have the capability to do in the roles that we have now is to share the light, share the limelight, allow for opportunities to show and mentor others about different strengths that they have, recognizing strengths in the people that are around you. You know, I think a lot of times we don't see our own power. We don't recognize our own power. And so identifying that and recognizing that in someone else so that they can then live into that space is a great gift that you have once you have gotten to a space to do so.
I'm going to skip over here to you.
Great. Well, I would say that my leadership journey started with my grandmother. I was raised primarily through my grandmother and my grandfather because my mother was in the military and traveled a lot through the military. And my grandparents opened a business when I was 4 years old. And so I was reared in the family business, and I'm a third-generation business owner. And I learned a lot of leadership lessons from my grandmother. And the business was residential care for the developmentally disabled. So at a very early age, I developed a compassion for individuals who couldn't take care of themselves. And that's something that was deeply instilled in me. And I worked in the family business until I went to college. And at that point, I knew I wanted to do something in the human service helping profession. So leadership, I believe, was always in me, but then it was cultivated even further as I became a young adult and I became a mother, and I started to be, more inquisitive and really start to think about, how my worldview and how I look at everything. And I've always had a business acumen because I was raised with that. So the way I got to the Statehouse is really kind of working in the community. It came from a very grassroots perspective. I started working in my own nonprofit, housing individuals who were formerly incarcerated that didn't have a place to stay. Did that for 14 years before I even entered the political scene. And at some point, I came across Speaker Davidson, and because I attended someone's fundraiser, a gentleman, John Rush, who was running for the House, I attended a fundraiser that was hosted by Speaker Davidson. I didn't even know who she was. And but I was very intrigued. I was questioning. I was a younger woman, and I just decided, I just want to understand what this is all about. And so I remember meeting her at this fundraiser, and we connected immediately. I mean, her light just shined so bright. And I remember her telling me after a conversation, you should apply to be in my institute. And I'm thinking, I don't even know who you are. So I did some research, and I looked her up, and I was fascinated. And I applied to be in the institute, and to my surprise, I was able to come for an interview, and I got in. And it changed my life. Leadership was already in me, but it cultivated and birthed something and allowed me to be around a network of women where I could feel safe, to really grow and to share and to understand really what this government and political landscape looked like. And right after I graduated from the Institute in 2017, and Mehek and I were in the same class, right after that, I ran for office the very next year in 2018 for Franklin County Commissioner. Didn't win that race, but I just had the confidence. I really believed I could soar, and that was because of my sisterhood, the circle of sisterhood that was established at the Joanne Davison Leadership Institute. So I would not be here today in this capacity as a state senator if it had not been for the role and influence of that institute.
And I love the fact that you mentioned the sisterhood, because you really do have a sisterhood. She has a posse that follows her everywhere. It's impressive. Mehek.
So for me, I think leadership has been something that I have watched growing up. I was born in India, always say made in Ohio or America. I watched my dad take risks. So he came to this country with $30 in his pocket. And as much as I have looked at my dad's journey, it's really my mother who has always been the one that when I came home and I got a 9.5 out of 10, she would say, "Why didn't you get a 10? When I got a 10, she said, "Why don't you get extra credit?" She always pushed for something more. And she was always the driver behind me, staring at my dad saying, "I want to be just like him." So that risk factor has always been in me. I have always thought, well, why can't I do this, regardless of whether there's a man or a woman in a role? And I remember graduating from IU Bloomington, and the only reason I went to IU, I love Ohio State, was to get away from my large Indian family. See, when you're Indian, everybody's an auntie and an uncle, and you can't get away with anything. So I promised my parents, if I got into a higher ranked school than Ohio State, please let me go. And they did. They let me go to IU Bloomington. But when I got back, I looked at the state of Ohio and I thought, all I want to do is serve. That's why I went to law school. It was to use my law degree to make a difference, to help underprivileged kids, which I'll circle back and get to in a second. But it was always, how do I give back? How do I make a difference? How do I help people? And it was Speaker Davidson. I was working for Governor Kasich at the time as an attorney for him, a very junior attorney. And I asked Speaker Davidson if she'd have a cup of coffee with me. And I told her, I said, all I want to do is serve in any capacity. And she told me that I would run for office someday, and I was probably going to lose, but not to get discouraged. And that's exactly what happened. I ran for office, I lost, and I'm still not discouraged, because I genuinely believe that when you have so much happening in our country, you just zone into your state and your neighborhoods and the people that you love and that surround you, there's a way to stand up and to step up and to always say you're willing to serve. When I look at my law degree today, it was, how do I help underprivileged and some of these kids that truly need help? I started my own business. I do name, image, and likeness, and I will make a joke and tell you it's not $1 million business. You get maybe $10 or $15. I mean, it's that funny to me, because I'm like, you buy me a cup of coffee, but I help kids and I look at their legal contracts. I started this with Cardell Jones, and it was to help protect kids that were competing in sports to not get taken advantage of, because there's so much out there. There's so many companies that will say, I'll do X for you or I'll do Y for you, but you have to sign your life away. You have to give me all this time and I'll pay you thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, this in my mind is the next generation of kids. So I do a lot of volunteer work in NIL. I've looked at every aspect of my life and tried to give back, but that one person that was the one that opened those doors for me was Speaker Davidson, and it was all because she said yes to a cup of coffee. So now in my capacity, I run a business, I run an NIL agency. I'm always saying yes. It doesn't matter who's reaching out. I don't care what their political affiliations are. If they want to give back, if they want to help, if they want to especially help kids succeed in the state of Ohio, I'm always willing to roll up my sleeves, because I genuinely think if you give one person just a couple minutes of your day, they could be a future leader. And my mom's a teacher. I go back to what she taught me. It takes one person to change your life. And for me, it was Speaker Davidson saying yes to me. But since then, it's been a trickle down of opportunities, and I've been able to give my time and efforts and talent in places, and I feel really blessed because of that.
Well, undoubtedly, we have great mentors up here, and the raising up of women is so important. I know I have read somewhere, and I think it's probably pretty self-evident, that countries that respect women and recognize their right to be treated equally do better economically. The women are educated, and they contribute to a productive economy. And there is an old Chinese proverb that women hold up half the sky. Now, I think sometimes we feel like we're holding up the whole sky. I just want to add that. But that, what it means is that we simply want an equal playing field in our professional endeavors. Admittedly, some men feel threatened by this. So how do we mentor young women to help them convince others, or to convince that minority of the population, and I want to believe it's a minority, that all boats do rise with the tide? So, Mehek, why don't I start with you?
Well, I don't think it's just men in this respect. I think women, and I think I want to be very honest, I think women are our worst enemies. We work against each other rather than working towards a goal. And I have said this to so many women as I've worked with. If I succeed, I'm taking you with me. But if you succeed, tell me what I can do better so I can continue to rise and continue to grow. The state has so many positions, whether it is the CEO of a company, a communications director, or the next state senator. There are so many opportunities to serve because we have so many problems, but we have to help one another. And I believe in karma. I think if you do good for others, God's watching and it comes back around. And you don't have to be a person of faith. I am, but I lean on that hard. So I think we have to do a better job as women of helping one another. And knowing when you help somebody, there's a ripple effect. They're going to remember. They may call you for something in the future, but do what's right. And then with men, it's simple. Roll up your sleeves and always say you're willing to do anything. I remember when I was in Indiana, I asked for the toughest job. I had to do an internship, and they said, great, you can work for the Senate president. And it's a man. And I said, great, I'm happy to do this. I ran and got coffee. I ran and got lunches. I did everything Senator Long asked me for. And every intern would laugh because this lady called every single day and said, I have an issue. And I said, I'll help you. Her light bulb was not working in the street, and she wanted to take her trash out at night. And every intern just said, well, tell her to take it out during the day. And I'm looking at them, and I'm like, well, we live in the United States of America. She can take her trash out when she wants to. So I called the city, and I helped fix that lady's light bulb. Senator Long found out, and that skyrocketed my career in politics. He allowed me in every single meeting, including with the speaker, who was a Democrat on the other side of the House. Loves the man. We got together so well. We understood each other. I helped with Real ID. Every single policy decision, Senator Long says, get Mehek in the room. I mean, I think it's just we have to show up. We can't be too busy to care. I've always said this, but I think women need to help women more than we have before, and I think we have opportunities every single day to do that.
Great. Emily?
Sure. I think with women, we are oftentimes not the one who is immediately selected for the role. So we see that there's a man in a particular role, and he appoints a woman and then steps aside so that woman is the actual successor. And so we really need to make sure that we are spending time focused in the role, working hard in the role, doing our best in that role. And a lot of times we are, and it goes unnoticed. Right? But if I look at, for example, Nancy Hollister, the only female governor we've ever had in the state of Ohio, she was governor for 11 days because she was the lieutenant governor. She stepped into that role running as lieutenant governor and became the governor, and the only governor so far that we can say is a woman for the state of Ohio. That happens so frequently where there's a woman who gets appointed to a role and then ultimately becomes either elected for that role or runs in that role, and it clears the way for the next women to be in that space. So if you are in a space where you can be appointed to a particular role, take that challenge, live into that role, do the best you can, because nobody likes to be the first. At least I don't love being the first. I would love to be the 277th or whatever. But if you can be the first, make sure that you're doing it to the best of your ability and leaning into it, because we are setting examples for the next women in those roles. And a lot of times it comes from an appointment that a man has cleared the way to allow a woman to have. And I wish it wasn't that way. I wish that it was immediately access was given, but we have the ability to really succeed once we get there and shine in so many brilliant ways.
Excellent. Senator Reynolds.
So I think we really need to embrace what it means to be our sister's keeper. Building a true leader is not about climbing a ladder. It's about building an elevator to take others with you. And so you mentioned that I have this amazing team, and I do. I have an amazing team of not just women, but men, but mostly women. There's about 12 of us, and literally we meet every day at 7 a.m., Monday through Friday, on a Zoom call. And we're pouring into each other. They don't allow me to feel like I'm an imposter, because there's some days that I just don't feel on, and I can be vulnerable around them. They're my campaign team. They're my sisterhood. Some of them are church friends or sisters that are with me. They pray for me. I pray for them. We sharpen each other. I call them the Results Matter team, because when I ran on Results Matter. And so anytime I need a group of women to show up or a team to show up to anything I'm doing, we have a WhatsApp, and I'm saying, here's where I am. And when you see them come, you know that that's the team. And I think it's very, very important to be our sister's keeper, because when we give of ourselves, we don't just give, we grow. And iron truly does sharpen iron. Those are not just buzzwords. We are able to grow. And I have seen how they've been able to expand their skills. They're inspired by just the levels that I've even been able to go to. And I have committed to not only taking them with me, I've opened doors. I've opened doors for them. And anywhere that I go, I open doors for others. And I truly believe that the more that is given to you, to whom much is given, much more is required. So we are required. And I believe that if you are trusted with those levels of leadership, and the more you open doors, the more leadership you're going to get. So we don't have to feel like, oh, if I share too much, then it's going to hurt me, or things like that, because that's probably why people don't grow, is because they begrudge somebody else. But when you can open those doors, you're going to expand and enlarge your territory yet that the more. And so I live by that principle, and I demonstrate it. And there's been so many people that are in leadership positions today because of it.
Well, that's a great segue into the next question when you talk about sharing, because the next question is multifaceted. You can kind of choose how you want to answer it. And that is, was there a time in your career when you felt marginalized because you were a woman? How did you deal with it? Or was there simply a time when you felt that maybe you weren't successful, or you hit a bump in the road? How did you deal with it? What's the importance of being resilient? How did you learn to be resilient? And so tell us about a time maybe when you were unhappy in your career, and how did you pivot?
Who
wants to start?
I can start. So currently I'm in law school, as Elizabeth shared, and as if I needed another degree. But I'm in law school at a hybrid law program through the University of Dayton, which allows me to go on Zoom 3 nights a week. And this is my 4th year. Generally, law school is 3 years, but because it's part-time, it takes 4 years. And I can tell you that I'm truly a non-traditional student at 50 years old, and I have a whole host of other things to do. And so quite frequently throughout the program, I've felt I do not belong here. And sometimes my grades prove that. It's tough. It's a very, very tough program, and there are brilliant minds around me. And so there's been a few times that I've quit in my head, probably at least 10. And one time that I remember getting a test score, and then I just emailed the registrar and said, I'm out. And but I found out the next day when I had buyer's remorse that I had emailed the wrong registrar. It was for the regular university and not for the law school, so thank goodness. But anyway, what changed for me is that I'm very blessed to pretty much have a team in every aspect of my life. So I have a law school team too. And so these ladies will never allow me to quit. They just won't. They won't allow me to dim my light. And so one mentor became 2, 2 became 3, and now I have like a team, a network of people in law school that just remind me, you belong here, you got in the program just like we did. And now I have not only the confidence, I'm, about 7 months away from graduation, and very, very excited that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And now I have even better grades. So, but it's that circle of sisterhood once again, where you need people to show up for you, and you can show up for them, and you can sharpen each other. Because a lot of times we do, get the opportunity to be in the room or to be at the table, and then we just feel like we don't belong. But you need that power, that wind beneath your wings to push you forward and remind you that you do belong here.
I think we all can agree here that probably all of us wanted to quit at some point or another in law school. Anyways, Emily. Sure.
I think that with being a lawyer, you're often, and a woman of color, you're often the only one in the room. You're the only woman, you're the only woman of color, you're the only young, I was young. And so there are many times where you feel like you're bringing a singular perspective. And also, when I was in-house counsel at Ohio State, I was also deemed generally to be the factory of no, which I really was an innovative lawyer. I attempted very hard to not say no. I'd say no on this direction. Let's try and reframe the question and figure out how we get to yes, right? That's the way you can be an innovative attorney. So not only are you young, a woman, a person of color, and the no factory, you're trying really hard to be innovative and thoughtful. But what I would say is actually, when I think about going to a law firm, Hogan Lovells is a large international law firm. It's fantastic. It has an amazing reputation. The work is hard. The hours are long. And I went to Hogan with one child already and left with 3 total. And so the way you get really good deals, or the way that you get on really good cases, is that you're available and you're doing not just the daily work, but you're also showing up in the evening to the cigars and scotch evening so that they see that you're fun to put you on the case. It's not that way anymore, but that's how it was. And so I would be deciding between going home to feed my children or going to Shelley's back room in order to have cigars and scotch. And to be able to get on the next case and be chosen to get the really good clients. And I'm lucky that I have a fabulous partner who was there for me the entire way. Okay, if this is what you have to do tonight, this is what you have to do. But when I think about the schedule that I had at that time, it was get up in the morning with babies at 5 a.m., feed them, dress them, clothe them, get on the train with them, 1 to 3 of them, to drop them off at daycare by 7:30 or 8 a.m., spend until 6 p.m. at the firm, get them, usually late, $10 a minute, get back on the train with all of them, and while trying to sing and shush and read books, feed them dinner, do bath time, do bedtime, and then literally run back to the office, because that was my exercise, run the 2.5 miles back down the hill, down Capitol Hill to my office to work for 4 more hours. And so, that's a time where I think as a woman, as a mom, it felt very lonely to be doing that grind every single day and still not quite making my hours. And so I think that's a time in my life that really built me into the person I am today, and hopefully the type of boss I am today and the type of mom I am today.
Well, you talk about babies. I have a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old. Yes. So when I think about the hours that you have put in, oh my gosh, I have a long way to go, and I'm already seeing it. What I think about as some of the hardest parts in my life are very similar to what you have shared. It is being the youngest female attorney, and you fill in the blank, youngest female attorney in the governor's office. And then after that, being the youngest attorney that was in a very large company working when my general counsel stepped down. And there were massive implications and deals happening, and we just kept waiting for a general counsel, and we kept waiting for a general counsel. But I kept doing the work. I kept showing up. I would take the work home. I would try and cut costs so we didn't go to outside counsel. I tried to do everything right. But everybody on that senior leadership team, except for 1 or 2, were male. So when we would go into these meetings, they needed an attorney. So I was there, I was present, I was ready. But every meeting, I will never forget, the CFO would ultimately say, well, that's going to cost a lot, and we should really double check this with outside counsel. And I would sit there and say, well, I've done the research, and here's what we have to do. And I'll never forget this. It was in a board meeting when he second-guessed something I said, and it's not challenging me. I accept that, and I want that because I want to be better. But he said, are you sure? And I looked at him and I said, not only am I sure, because I have done $395 million contracts for the governor in the state of Ohio, sir, but if you want a $10 million fine, then be my guest and don't follow the law. And he never challenged me after that. I'll never forget it because I think it tells you, and it taught me, was I sure? Yes, I was shaking in my boots, sure, because I'm like, am I getting fired tomorrow? But it was doing the homework. I think a lot of times when we talk about imposter syndrome and all of this, I think going that extra mile, doing that research, doing the homework. When my kids go to bed, I immediately take a notebook out and I start writing down, what's the next case am I working on? How am I helping this client? Did I do enough before I go to bed? Because we have to be smarter. We have to be right. We have to be okay with being challenged, and we have to be firm. We're wearing a lot of hats. Men can get away with a lot, and I've watched it. Nobody asks a man, are you sure? Nobody. And I was sure, but you have to push back and you have to do the homework. I've been in a lot of these situations, and I always kill with kindness. I always smile, and I'm always saying, oh, I'm sure. And I think slowly when you build and you're right and you help people, they come on your side. But I can't tell you how many situations I had where I was the youngest female and people were going to the general counsel to ask a question. And this is the other thing. I think when you have a boss that backs you, then he's going to say, you have to ask Mehek. She's the person who's in charge. And so I've been blessed with having that too. I think that I had a male boss who always backed me, who always said, Mehek, you have the final say in this. And I always went to him for advice and guidance, but he always had my back in the governor's office, which was one of the toughest jobs. We had about 14 other general counsels. Most of them were male, and most of them were between 15 to 20 years older than me. So it was really having a good mentor, but making sure I did the work.
That's excellent. Being the oldest person on this panel, I can tell you, I recall very well what it's like to be the only woman in the room. And I think it's important that everyone hear that we all have the imposter syndrome at some point, and doing the extra work is what gives you the confidence, right, to be able to stand up. And however you stand up, I mean, there are different ways sometimes that you have to do. Sometimes it's kill with kindness. Sometimes it's no. I'm telling you now, right? And I'm taking a stand. But it's important, and it's important that we share that with the younger people coming up who also have those same feelings. You know, the men have it too, but they just don't, don't talk about it. So, and in that regard, we all stand, all of us here stand on the shoulders of many women who sacrificed much in order to be able to succeed. I think about, at my age, the number of women who went before me in law firms who sacrificed everything, who didn't have families, who didn't marry often. But I think that now we are in a time when perhaps many of us, and even I think many in the younger generation, think that women can have it all. And I think that, frankly, we probably all can have it all, but maybe just not all at the same time, right? So you may have grown up in an environment like I did, that it was expected that you're going to go to college. I'm lucky. I grew up in that kind of environment. But I'll tell you that even after I married and we adopted our children, my mother, who was pretty progressive, wondered why I wasn't staying home with my girls. She was surprised. Now, she came around, and, all three of you have raised children, have children, different ages. Tell us, and I think this is important to share, that what is it that you see as your biggest challenge today at this point in your life? And how do you maintain a work-life balance? Because obviously there was a time when you had a difficulty with it. And what is your advice for women thinking about the future? Who should we start with? Mehek, you want to start with that? Because you're really working on that work-life balance right now with two under the age of 2.
Yeah. Look, I will be 100% honest. I want it all and I want it now, and that's just not how life works. And so I am trying to figure out how to prioritize. And the best advice I have gotten, one, is reading a book. It's probably the first book I've read since law school because I'm reading constantly for work. It's called Dear Mom. It was written by Dr. Nicole Saphier. She is a Fox News contributor. She's a doctor, she's a mom, but it's different chapters of different women. And I mean, it brought tears to my eyes every time I read a chapter traveling to New York to do the news, whether it was CNN, whatever news network I was on. And I learned very quickly that you have to prioritize. And not only prioritize, but it really does take a family around you. And it could be grandparents, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters. I am blessed to have my grandmother, my parents, my brother, a sister-in-law today that help try and guide me so that when I need help with the kids, they're there. And then an amazing husband. Michael is, we don't live in a traditional family where my role is in the kitchen and Michael's coming home and gets to do bath time, which is fun, by the way. It is truly, we try and work together as a team and we try and do everything we can at home. But in terms of work, I look for hours. I create hours. Sometimes, and this is embarrassing to admit, but I'll tell you, I take my phone in the bathroom and I listen to podcasts as I'm showering so I can be sharper and better. But I am eking out every single minute so that when I open that door and I'm seeing my children, I'm on for them. But the hardest thing I've had to learn is when I am with the kids, the phone is in another room and I am 100% with them. But then when I am doing the news or anything I'm doing in my life, then I'm 100% doing that. And I think that separation inside me really has helped me prioritize. I'm still not good at it, and I still want it all, but I'm getting better at juggling.
And I think women are good at compartmentalizing. So, Senator Reynolds.
So yes, I'll share that. I think that whole terminology about work-life balance is just, it just doesn't exist. I mean, it's a myth. It's unachievable. It suggests a rigid 50-50 split. I like to embrace and live the concept of work-life rhythm. And rhythm is like a dance. And sometimes rhythm means it ebbs and it flows. And so it's important because sometimes as you're prioritizing your schedule, there's some things that need your attention at that moment, and that's where you give your energy. And then there's other times where something else might need your energy, whether it's your family, your business, ministry, what have you. And so I strive more for work-life rhythm. That's what works for me. There's seasons for everything. But when you're trying to be rigid and have a schedule where everything fits perfectly, that is the perfect storm to just have a breakdown. And then sometimes you just have to be able to give time to yourself. Self-care is health-care. And you do need to be able to take those mental breaks. You need time to just spend, getting your head clear and understanding where your focus is. But I don't even try to do work-life balance. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing in my world. I fail at that. But work-life rhythm, I do very, very well. And I get to see I even make room for my granddaughter on Saturdays. I get her for a full day. That's the only time that I schedule that nobody interrupts that, my time with my granddaughter. One full day, she gets me 24 hours, and then she goes back home to her parents. Outside of that, let's dance.
All right. Emily.
And I actually have a very similar viewpoint on it to Senator Reynolds. I practice yoga. Yoga is part of my self-care. I do it every morning. And in yoga, the hardest poses that you do are balancing poses, right? You work up an entire class to the last pose that is the balancing pose. And why would we want something like work-life balance when we know that's the most unattainable, the most critical thought that you have to put towards the thing is the balancing pose, the highest amount of focus? You're going to break, you're going to fall. And so I think of it similarly as a work-life flow, and know that I'm not always going to be 100% at everything. Sometimes I show up and I am a really good mom, like the best mom, like on point, and I congratulate myself for it. But I might not be as great at my job that day, right? I might be a really amazing employee today, but I am not as good at being a wife, right? And so it is a dance, it's a rhythm, it's a flow. It is not, and life is long. We have this gift of a beautiful long life. I don't know how long it will be, but for each day that I'm in it, I'm trying to show up the best I can for all of the people who are in this space and use the gifts that I've been given in order to have this life.
Well, to wrap it up, we're going to finish off with, we're here because we're talking about, the monument that's going to be built at some point. and the importance of portraying women in that monument. Women who fought so hard for the recognition of the right to vote. I'd like to hear your perspectives on why is this monument about women's history needed, and what message will it send to the future generations? Emily, do you want to start?
Sure. So my daughters are 14, 12, and 10. They are the children who Jen Miller mentioned might be showing up here on the Statehouse lawn. They look for images that remind them of themselves. They look for spaces that they think they can be in. I asked my 14-year-old a few years ago, do you think you could be a governor? Yeah. They've been on this journey with me for a long time, so they know I'm fairly politically active and that I'm here for women's empowerment. And she's like, no. And I was like, oh, it's not a job you would want, honey? And she's like, no, women don't do that job. Girls don't do that job. And I was like, I have failed. That was one of those life balances where it was on the wrong side. And so she had at that point never seen a woman governor. So we pulled up pictures of what a woman governor might look like, or who else in other states might have them, where else women serve. And she said, oh, I see. So I can be a woman governor. I said, yes, absolutely. Right. So I'm not a big monument person generally, but if there are going to be monuments to people, there should be monuments that reflect all of us, so that our children can see it, so that we can see it, so that our history and our history remembers the women, and so that we know that we're all history makers making Ohio better.
Mehek?
I couldn't have said that better myself. For me, I want to look up to something, and I think that so easy is for people to erase history or to retell it, and there's so much noise in the world that a monument still stands there by itself, and it's incumbent upon whether you can read or write or bring your child there to remember somebody and to talk about it. And there are a lot of wonderful men, but when I look at our great state of Ohio, we've talked about Speaker Davidson and Governor Nancy Hollister. There are so many opportunities to celebrate women. But if we don't now, I think there's a gap in our legacy. There's a gap in what women are doing. And if we don't create a space for us to come, to gather, to celebrate, and to talk in a monument fashion, I'm worried we will be forgotten.
And finally, Senator Reynolds, wrap it up for us.
Yes, I think to just add to that, there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel incredibly blessed to be a part of this amazing institution and the People's House. But as I walk through the halls and I look at the pictures on the walls, not one of them look like me. And that is very, it's hurtful, knowing that people who look like me helped build this edifice. And I think that, so it's very important for history to be a part of it, because if we're not a part of it, then, like Mehek said, we're forgotten. And I think it's very important for the posterity of our future generations to be able to know that not only can it be achieved by you, but that you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and that we are our ancestors' dream girls. So.
Thank you all. This has been wonderful. Jen?
So I just want to say how cool it is to have so many women up here, right? I've been coming to these hearings in this room for decades, and I think we would be in really great shape if we had a committee of these ladies. And so I really loved this conversation and some really sage advice. I just want to remind everyone that this was brought as part of the Ohio Woman Suffrage Monument Commission, and that we are working to erect a monument on the Ohio Statehouse lawn in 2026, and we do need a lot of funding. And so we just encourage everyone here and those who are watching this later to donate. And you just need to go to the Cap Square Foundation website, and every little bit counts. I really hope that we get these donations from all ages and political backgrounds in every county, because you're right, this is our history. And so could you please just give this wonderful group of women leaders a round of applause?